Welcome to the latest episode of the Blazing Musket podcast. I'm your host, Thomas Pinzone, and we are here for 2026's first Roundtable show. Just like last year, we get a group of Blazing Musket writers and podcasters together once every month or 4 to 6 weeks to talk about everything that's going on with New England soccer. This was an immensely popular show last year. We all thoroughly enjoyed doing it, and we are sure that you all enjoyed listening to it. So hopefully you continue to do so in 2026. And if this is your first time listening to this episode, again, it is a great discussion that we have each month. We cover a lot of different topics. And so if this is your first one, we do hope that you enjoy it and continue to come back throughout 2026. One of the principal benefits of this monthly show is I do very, very little talking because we have so many guests that do a great job of doing it for me. So with that in mind, I'm just going to go around quickly. Everyone is going to introduce themselves, let you know who they are, how they contribute to the Blazing Musket, and just a little bit about them. So we will start off, with Sam Latoff, who was on last week's show. We have a policy about not coming on the show 2 weeks in a row, but Sam does run the entire show and is the executive producer, so he can do whatever he wants. So Sam, why don't you kick it off and just let people know who you are in case they didn't see the show last week.
I mean, yeah, executive producer, that's a new title for me. So, love to add that to the long list. But yes, Sam Ladoff, site manager of the Blazing Musket. Also, cover the Revs and Vermont Green FC. But I hope you guys know who I am, just like, all these lovely guests that are joining me today.
Sean, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and where you're from?
Yeah, so Sean Fecto from the Dergo Union podcast, a part of the Blazing Musket family, and certainly been covering the Hearts since the get go, and glad to be back for season number 2.
Go ahead, Mike.
Hey, it's Mike Popovich. I'm from the United Green podcast. I did that a little hey there for Sammy, who loves when I do that. But yeah, I'm from the United Green podcast. We cover Vermont Green, both men and soon to be women's teams. And we'll hopefully be getting some content maybe out of the UPSL team too. We'll see what happens. We're going to have a conversation in a couple of weeks with the owner there. So please tune in to us. You can find us on Instagram and Blue Sky.
And I'm Oliver Scholes. I don't have a podcast, but I am a pontificator in print for Blazing Musket, covering Hartford Athletic. Occasionally other things in the area as well, but primarily down here in Connecticut. And I'm happy to be back for this season.
But you are a podcaster. You come on this podcast several times a year. So I think that does, you can put that on your resume. Podcast experience. I don't know how far that gets you, but you can always make sure to include that on your resume, as I'm sure the rest of you do. All right, so look, there's a lot of like we talked about last week. There's a lot of really exciting things that are gonna come to pass for soccer in New England in 2026. But unfortunately, there is a bit of a dark cloud besides the one from the federal government. There is a bit of a dark cloud kind of hanging over everything, and that is, of course, the ongoing USL labor dispute, which does not appear to be coming any closer to any sort of a positive conclusion. Both sides, last I heard a couple weeks ago, at this point, the CBA has expired, and there doesn't seem to be much hope that is going to change anytime soon. So, as we go into what is supposed to be this incredible year of soccer in the U.S. and in New England, how do we feel about, how big of a problem could this become if the USL Players Association and the USL aren't able to get this all squared away with the season? The season's only a couple months away now.
Yeah, it's going to be real interesting to see what happens. I mean, I was lucky enough, on United and Green, we were able to chat with, Connor Tobin, who kind of heads up the USLPA. And it seems like obviously the potential for a strike could happen. Again, players could also be locked out. It just seems like we're at the point where there's been so much negotiation. Not a lot of traction has been made. I think they put something out today where now these contracts are being written where, players will get health insurance covered up to blah, 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 but now pending this new CBA. So it's really interesting to see that, again, the players, they're not asking for a whole lot. USL is really trying to continue to grow, and obviously has its goals for promotion and relegation. But I think, heading into this year, heading into a World Cup year, if there was to be any sort of stoppage or kind of any sort of prolonged labor dispute, it would have to hurt the kind of momentum that's going on within the league. So hopefully something will be figured out. But at the moment, like you said, Thomas, doesn't seem to be looking too good.
And Sam, can you just quickly clarify? Is this only for the championship, or is this for the championship and League One? Just try to have like an understanding of who is really affected here.
Yeah, I believe it's just for the championship. I believe USL League One has, their own CBA, and I believe, if I'm correct, that it expires in either this upcoming season or like into 2027 is when that expires. But yes, this is mainly focused on USL Championship players.
Yeah, I think that like it's just to touch on a couple of things that Sam talked about too, like this type of a thing doesn't always get the spotlight it deserves, especially in what's considered a lower league, right? Trying to grow into a league that's competitive with the MLS, at least with the on the field product. But this will absolutely shape the future of the league, right? This isn't just like inside baseball, union or labor talk. Like myself being a VP of a labor union, like this actually does go kind of to the core of what the USL wants to be at this point. And, whether it can actually end up considering itself and calling itself a true professional league in the next season and beyond. The thing about these labor disputes in a lot of unions, like my union has a no strike clause during the period where we are in the collective bargaining agreement. Lots of these unions don't have that. So, healthcare unions, electrical workers unions, sometimes don't have them, and you end up in an endless cycle of just bargaining and working out the kinks. There's a hospital system out in California that's been on strike, or not on strike, but has been without a contract per se for 6 years now. But when you look at this league and some of the other unions, like the electrical workers union, sometimes there is a no strike clause built in so that the previous labor agreement stays in place while they're still bargaining. So it could go on indefinitely. I don't know that is actually the case with this labor agreement. I haven't actually been able to kind of read through it and pick through it the way I wanted to yet, but it 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 could be a spot where we're not going to miss games. We're not going to have a lockout or a strike. It could just be a continuation of the collective bargaining agreement until they find common ground. So that the players are actually protected by the previous collective bargaining agreement. And I think that's, what we would hope for as fans. And, something so that we continue to get to see these amazing folks go out there and do what they do and what they love to do.
Yeah, Mike, I'll just jump in and say, yes, that is the case, that this CBA does have that provision, that it remains in effect past once the expiration until either side provides notification that they're going to move into a work stoppage. And I think that's really critical because as we were kind of winding down 2025, there were a lot of folks who I think maybe don't have a lot of experience with labor unions, don't have a lot of experience with CBAs, who were kind of under the impression that if no agreement was reached by December 31st, there was going to be no 2026 season, right? There was going to be an immediate lockout, etc. And that was never really kind of on the table. Now, it could still happen, of course, but there's every possibility as well that they could play all through this season without a new contract. They could play all through 2027 without a new contract. To your point about, working without a contract, I've worked in environments where it was 2-3 years. I've never been 6 years, like you were mentioning in California, but it could go for a long time potentially. I don't personally, just based on what I've read, what I've heard, I don't think that's likely here. I think we will reach an agreement sooner rather than later. It does seem like a lot of the issues, the wages, the healthcare, things have moved close enough together that you can kind of see how those issues might be resolved. They're close enough that you could split the difference, and neither side would be fully happy with that, but you'd get an agreement, right? The thing that really seems to be hanging out there, where there isn't they don't seem as close to an agreement, is on licensing. The Players Association proposal and the league's proposal seem very, very far apart, and there hasn't really been a lot of movement over the last few weeks, at least in terms of what's been said publicly or what's been communicated through back channels that then kind of leaked out through different media outlets about this. So that's what I would be keeping an eye on, is the licensing component and how far apart the two sides appear to be on that. My understanding is that there are two negotiating sessions, two bargaining sessions scheduled for this week. We'll see if by Friday we're starting to hear some other narrative. People are saying we're close. People are saying we're not close. That will probably make itself apparent, later in this week or through the weekend. And anyone who's really paying close attention to this or wants to know what's going on should be paying attention to what they're seeing from the Players Association on social media, what they're hearing from people like Kartik Krishnaiyer and others who are really plugged in and know a lot about what's going on. That's where I would check back and look, and we'll see where they're at. But licensing does seem to be the thing that's really standing out.
Sean, there's all this. USL has been pretty bold, I would say, in recent years about talking about all the things that they're going to do. Promotion, relegation, they're going to add another league. They want to continue to expand, right? And I think this has kind of been a point that the Players Association has made. They're saying they're going to do all these great things, which is fantastic. But at the same time, we kind of get these occasional reminders that maybe the USL doesn't quite have things all figured out and patched together as you would hope that they would, right? I mean, this, again, from a perspective of a team that is in League One, like the players that are coming back this year, they might have an agreement in place. But again, like this, I can't imagine that this is a good sign for all the things that USL wants to do down the road when they can't seem to get together on basic things like healthcare for players for 12 months out of the year.
Yeah, and I think taking a little bit about what Oliver and Mike were saying, it sounds like maybe some of the licensing is possibly maybe one of the bigger sticking points, and hopefully that's the case, and they can come through that part, and maybe they're a little bit closer on the insurance and the healthcare side. That's what I would hope. But yeah, from sitting from the USL League One side of things, certainly paying attention to this as championship is going through this, and the timing of this happening in a World Cup year. This is a really bad time to be dancing around the bargaining table. So I would like to think that the championship side will probably start the season and still not quite have everything all together yet. I just hope that it does not linger too long into the season until they finally say, all right, guys, I think this is probably about as good as we can go for right now. Maybe let's just sign this for a year or two, and we'll come back and we'll continue talking. Let's go ahead and we get to a good point where everyone's got health care, and the contract pieces and the money coming back the other way is looking pretty good for everybody. And maybe they can meet halfway on licensing. That painful middle ground, as they always like to say, and get something signed for a year or two. But USL League One, I do believe their contract is good through the end of 27. So they're good for about a couple seasons or whatever. But wouldn't be surprised if maybe towards the end of 26, maybe just prior to the beginning of the 2027 USL League One season, they don't start getting together and start talking about a new contract.
And Mike, now can you and Oliver, as well. I personally, I'm a pro-union person, but I've never actually been in one, oddly enough. But what is it like when you're in this situation where if nobody goes on strike or gets locked out, if these guys turn up for what it is at work, they turn up for work in preseason, what is that like when you are, that the people that you work for and the people that represent you can't agree on some of these basic things, but you're still expected to like what is that like? Is that create like a higher level of antagonism between between the workers and management, for players? Like what is it like to kind of be in this limbo situation where nothing is resolved, but you're still expected to come to work every day.
Yeah, I mean, it does create a lot of tension. Before my group of techs at at UVM Medical Center had organized and became part of the union, we did see the nurses go on strike, right? And the strike is always the biggest tool that you have in your toolbox as a union, and two, it's always the last thing that you want to do, right? So when you're looking at even leading up into a work stoppage, there's a lot of tension because the sticking points are the hardest things that you know you're trying to bargain over in the end, whether it's wages, whether it's healthcare. I've personally been part of 2 bargaining sessions, going into our 3rd here in the spring, um, and been on at the negotiating table, been on the table team for those, and will be for this 3rd. um the thing that can happen that really hurts when you're extending a contract, um unless you have provisions within your contract, is that you lose that the worker loses the right to arbitrate. So what that means is you can go through any kind of a grievance process, and generally it's like a 3-step grievance process, and at that point you're kind of, as a worker, you're kind of handcuffed. Arbitrations cost a lot of money, they take a lot of time, lawyers are involved, and they can get very, very messy. The problem with arbitration is that if you go into an arbitration, it's a 50-50 proposition, right? Um, but also arbitration is costly for the other side. And we don't like to go through arbitrations at all. Um, I've personally been through 4 or 5 grievances that went to arbitration, or that had arbitration scheduled that never actually went into arbitration because you settle in that time period between your last step in arbitration. But you lose that right to do that when you are extending a contract. So your contract may still hold, but you just lose that right to arbitrate, which gives the employer the right to basically just deny all of your grievances, just
out of hand,
straight through, whether they have credence or not. Um, I think one of the big things with labor unions, is that they're typically seen as kind of like thugs, try and push around the employer, and labor unions generally get seen as people who are lazy, who want to do the least amount of work for the most amount of pay, and that's just not the case, especially in these sports unions. You know, we've seen it with Major League Baseball, we've seen it with hockey. The NFL has gone through work stoppages, and obviously nobody wants to see that. And I think that's why it's kind of a good thing that they're going to continue being protected by the CBA, the previous CBA, in this league, because they're kind of at an inflection point, right? Where if they go into a major work stoppage, it could completely kill the league, and I don't think anybody wants that. The owners don't want it, and certainly the players don't want that. So everybody wants to come to an agreement, and I don't think tensions are going to get too high with this one. Um, this league is still in its infancy, so I mean, as far as where they want to be. So I think this is just the beginning of talks, and I think that when they do come to an agreement, it's going to be great for League One, and the Super League, or the women's side. Uh, when they have to come to their contract negotiations as well.
Yeah, you bring up a good point though. So Sam, I mean, I remember, I don't know if any of you were alive, in the 1994 baseball strike. Now, even in 1994, baseball had been around for over 100 years, right? It was an immensely popular sport. That strike to such a popular league did a huge amount of damage, largely because of when that strike took place. That strike took place where at that point the Montreal Expos were going to win their division. The best season that they ever had. Really talented team. Moises Alou, Pedro Martinez. That whole thing never comes to fruition because of a strike, and that did long-term lasting damage to Major League Baseball, a league that had been established for over 100 years at that point. The USL Championship does not have 100 years, right? They don't have 100 years of experience. This is supposed to be the greatest year of soccer that this country's ever seen. Like, could there be a worse time for USL to get tied up in something like this than now?
I mean, I would say no. I mean, I remember talking to Connor Tobin and like, imagine you're attending a World Cup, or even just the fact that there's a World Cup in the United States, and one of its soccer leagues is going through a labor dispute. If this was happening in MLS, it would be getting, a lot of flack, and I think USL is getting plenty of flack as well too. But I think with the backdrop of the World Cup, where you're having MLS kind of move to this new calendar, USL is kind of looking to elevate itself, as an up and coming league, and could potentially, always compete with MLS. That's, as much as they might shy away from it, that's always going to be the comparison. I think it's crucial that they end up figuring out a deal. I think it's crucial that, hopefully some of these benefits there's some common ground met. I mean, it's always interesting too, because, something I learned from speaking with Connor Tobin is that it's not like the Player Association is negotiating with each and every team. They're essentially just negotiating with USL, like the company, and USL itself. So that can kind of provide some, if they're kind of, separation between, these players being angry that they're in this league that's trying to grow and make itself seem like a top tier pro league, and they're denying them things like health insurance for the entire year, or, proper wages or what have you. So I would say this couldn't come at a worse time for USL. And I think when they have the opportunity to capitalize on an MLS calendar change and the World Cup being here, it's kind of shooting themselves in the foot to not be able to, come to an agreement with this labor dispute.
Yeah, I mean, I think everybody wants to avoid a work stoppage during the World Cup, right? And I think everyone wants to avoid a work stoppage period. The players' union is certainly not in a position to sustain a strike for a very long period of time, right? Like, that's probably not something they could manage for an extended duration. And once games start playing, if we're going to miss games, the clubs are going to be in a really difficult position too, because of how dependent the clubs are on gate revenue to keep operating.
Yep.
Right? Nobody is in a good position if we have a work stoppage. But I think the question of who benefits more from a work stoppage, or who would gain the upper hand with a work stoppage, is going to shift, right? If we don't have an agreement over the next couple of weeks before the season actually kicks off, you're going to see kind of a little bit of ebb and flow in terms of who might be more willing to engage in that. The players will have more leverage at different times, right, than the clubs might, or than the league might. I personally don't think a work stoppage is in the best interest of the league at any point. It's unclear to me if it's in the best interest of the players. It really depends on what the sticking points actually are. To Mike's point, a strike is the last thing you want to do. It's your most powerful weapon, but once you've used it, you don't have any more weapons left. It's the last thing you have as a labor union. So I don't know if the players will decide at some point that the situation is so bad that we have no choice. We have to kind of pull the trigger on this. The other thing I will say, though, is I think in some ways players' unions, sports unions, have an advantage that a lot of other unions don't have, which is that on a daily basis, kind of the people who are telling you to go out there and practice and leading you into the games are not the owners. It's your coach, it's your manager. And in some cases, the manager is very, very close to the ownership, and that can be to everyone's detriment. And in other cases, there's a little bit of space between the manager and the ownership, and that can create an environment where, purely from a perspective of playing, purely from a perspective of are we ready to pursue this season, everyone can get to work in that way, because the person who's showing up and saying, let's do sprints, let's do this, let's get ready, let's get on the bus, is not the owner, right? It's not the person who's on the other side of the negotiating table. It's much more akin to kind of a middle manager in other environments where that's not the person who's really kind of holding up the labor agreement. We don't see this a lot though. We don't see a lot of places. If you look at the NFL, they don't play without an agreement. If we look at MLB, they don't play, right? Like other leagues don't do this. So we're in a little bit of a unique situation with USL where we're going to see potentially, at least for the first part of the season, what it looks like for this league to be playing while the negotiating is still happening. And maybe I'm wrong about how that's going to play out, but I do feel like there's a little bit of an advantage for these participants, for the players, in that the playing can sometimes be separated from the other things. Because it's like the checks are still coming, right? Even if they're not the new checks under the new CBA, the checks are still coming. The previous provisions are still there. So, it's not a great situation to be in. Nobody wants to be in this place. I think it's always great when you can get your agreement settled before the previous one expires, so that you're just rolling from one into the new one. But we are where we are, and I hope we hope for the best, and I hope that best outcome is the best possible outcome for the players, for the people who are out there performing, for all of our entertainment.
Yeah, absolutely. Sean, I want to ask you. Sam brought up the point here that I think I wouldn't say this is unique to the USL, but Portland Hearts Up Pine, I think, did a very good job of highlighting the disparity in how USL clubs, whether it's Championship, League One, or certainly Vermont Green in League Two, the Players Association is negotiating with the league, and then the league has to go back to the owners and say, "Hey, look, this is just we think this might get the deal done." And I'd imagine that the hardest part of this whole thing is there must be teams that can afford to swallow some of this stuff easier than others. I mean, the Hearts of Pine in particular, I think, paint this. They absolutely destroyed all of League One in terms of average attendance, right? They would have been in the middle of the championship in terms of average attendance. So somebody like Portland Hearts of Pine might be able to say, okay, hey, no problem. We can do this. They need health insurance 12 months out of the year. No problem. They need a 20% bump in pay. No problem. Nope. Right. We can do all this. We have the money. We sold a ton of merch. Piece of cake. But then you have Westchester United, that maybe their financial situation is a little different, where, they can't, they might literally, we actually can't do this. So do you think that kind of adds to a layer of complexity to this whole thing? Whereas with Major League Baseball, for example, it's like, hey, look, you all have plenty of money. You're all billionaires. This isn't let's just kind of cut the BS here. You can afford this. It's just a matter of, do you want to do it or not? I just feel like this is much, much more complex because of how, the disparity between all these teams.
Yeah, no, you're certainly talking thin margins when you're talking about the clubs and even the players for that matter. I mean, they're not raking in millions of dollars in the championship or in League One. So really, both sides of the fence, margins are thin in terms of if they really had to continue on finances for weeks and even possibly even months into the future as they try to come up with an agreement. So, which is why always leagues will typically, and the championship is no different. They were trying to negotiate as early as possible to anticipate, trying to plow through a lot of disagreement and still trying to give themselves enough time to get something done before it ran out. And here we are with a championship. We're running out of the contract, and they're going to continue to play in good faith and continue to negotiate with the league and try to get something done. But in terms of League One, the Hearts, they definitely killed it last year when it comes to, gate receipts and merch and all that fun stuff. But sometimes people forget they also sunk $2.75 million into the facilities to go ahead
Yep.
and get started. So, I'm not looking at any books. It's a gut feel, just like the four of you. But I'm going to say they probably didn't make $2.75 million free and clear to pay off that debt. So they're more than likely still in debt. Probably a high percentage chance they're still in debt. So If they continue to kill it going forward, and they can get that 2.75 mostly paid off, if not entirely paid off, by the end of the USL League One contract, which is going to be, I think from memory, it's end of 2027. Yeah, they could possibly be one of the clubs that could probably survive with a really drawn out negotiation and possible strike for USL League One. When you are maybe one of 18 or maybe one of three clubs out of 18 to 20 teams in a league, you don't have much of a league left if the worst was to happen.
Yeah, I definitely think that and we'll finish on this last point here. Anybody wants to jump in, but I, I think my personal knee jerk reaction to this types of thing is to just assume, oh well, it's just it's the owners being greedy. It's labor versus capital. It's capital, but with this league, both of them, the championship and League One, it doesn't. I don't want to jump to that conclusion that the clubs, oh yeah, the clubs have they can do this, they just don't want to, right? So like Mike and Oliver, like when you're in these types of negotiations, if you're operating and you legitimately don't know what the other side can and can't afford, does that complicate things, right? Like with UVM, I mean, with a public company like Starbucks, right? Starbucks says, hey, we can't afford this stuff. Somebody can say, oh, well, actually, we can go through your balance sheet. We can go through, we can see everything. We can see all the numbers that you can see. You can't BS us. With this, I would imagine that the players union isn't sitting there, going through everyone's balance sheets, seeing who can and can't afford to do all this stuff. So does this create a situation where you have to trust the other side because you can't really see what their financial situation looks like?
Let's not be silly about this. The USLPA has they have folks doing a lot of research. There are research companies out there. We hire our own research company right now. We're in the middle of a healthcare dispute at UVM MC, and we have hired a person who specifically is an expert in healthcare and health insurance, really. So we have done the research. We have hired a number of other researchers to look into the finances of not just the hospital itself, but all looking into the finances of the public figures that are the heads of the hospital, so that we are going in fully prepared. So I know Connor and his team are going in fully prepared. So I don't think it's any different for any other union. They go out and they do the research before they start making demands, or start asking for things for these players, and the things that they're asking for are basic things that should be covered. But being in the fact that this is still in its infancy, this league, these collective bargaining agreements, each collective bargaining agreement builds on the previous one, right? So, and what one wins, the next one, the next one being USL one collective bargaining agreement, will benefit from that. So the USLPA is going to do its due diligence going into these labor disputes. And we also can't forget all of the people that are going to be affected by this too, if there is a work stoppage, right? And I did just want to mention that before we move on, but there are those folks that work in concessions, that work in the team shops, the people that do all of the stewards and all that are in that are not necessarily in the union, right? And they're working outside, ticket takers, all those folks that rely on this money to feed their families and stuff. So there are a lot of outside people that are also affected by this, and it's not just the players. So we do have to understand that. But to answer your question, Yeah, the USLPA has the money to do the research, and they're going to hire the right people to do it before they go in. They're not just going to fly in blind.
Yeah, I'll
No,
just say,
that's
yeah. I mean, you might
go
not
ahead.
know the dollar exact to the dollar, but you know, like you
You have
know
an idea.
what ballpark you're in. And the other thing I'll say too is the evidence of that, from my perspective from the outside, is you see how quickly we've seen kind of the gap close in terms of, is the wage dispute really a thing? Well, that seems to have closed a lot, right? We could probably reach a conclusion on the wage dispute, and the same on healthcare. And those are things that are implicated by the current finances of the league. And that's to Mike's point about they know, right? The USLPA knows. Nobody's pretending what the finances of the league are. The licensing is something that projects into the future. And that's something where no amount of research can really tell you what that's going to look like. You can guess. You can look around. You can say what it is the case in other leagues. But that's where my best guess about what that might mean, and Mike's best guess and Tom's, all of our best guesses might be wildly different. And we might all be able to justify those. And so I don't think it's surprising that the thing that we're still talking about is probably one of the biggest sticking points is something that isn't known to anybody right now and can't be known to.
I know. I think that's a good place to leave it there because I legitimately really didn't know like how much information is everybody operating with. I mean, we know, the club knows how much the players are getting paid, and I'm sure they have a rough idea of where they live and how difficult it might be to, you know, make a living from that amount of money and having to take, second jobs and all this other great, I just, again, good information there from Mike and Oliver. It is good to know that they are able to do research to try and ascertain the financial situation, of the other side, because otherwise it's kind of a one-sided thing. But yeah, I think like Sam said, this is really not a good time to have a labor dispute. And hopefully they're able to come to an agreement, and it allows everything to go smoothly. These people that are looking forward to going to these games, working at these games, are able to do so, and and it's a better deal for the players. I mean, we've talked so much on this show about how great it is to go to all these games, and we for sure wanted to continue. Kind of shifting gears a little bit, to kind of continue on this point here, the USL potentially has a really big opportunity going into next year where they have, they're going to play through the World Cup. MLS is not playing through the World Cup. They are. So I think that creates a really, really big opportunity for USL to put themselves out there. And then, of course, MLS is going to continue to take 2 months off in the summer every year going forward. So how important is this? How important is this opportunity for the USL to play right through the World Cup? There's no MLS. The tickets are obscene, disgusting amounts of money. But for a reasonable amount of money, you can actually go and watch live soccer this summer, and it won't be MLS and it won't be the World Cup.
Yeah, I think it's a massive opportunity for growth and maybe for engagement. I saw RAFC, they're kind of doing some sort of package where if you buy tickets, you can be entered into a contest to actually win World Cup tickets. But I think just in general, the idea of being able to have, clubs, fans be able to uh, come to this kind of soccer and be able to engage with it and not have to pay exorbitant amount of money. I think USL could really market itself and be able to gain new fans and gain just maybe some hardcore soccer fans who are in the region, but also to just people who are feeling the buzz of the World Cup and are like, all right, I might not be able to go to a World Cup game, but let me take my family or let me go out and go to, an RAFC game, Hartford Athletic game, Portland Hearts of Pine game. So it's really going to be interesting to see what happens. It's going to be interesting to see if we see further marketing kind of tying together the World Cup, with kind of USL Championship or USL League One clubs. But I would say it's a massive opportunity to maybe just increase some of that gate revenue or just the potential to kind of make some new fans with, the potential fever pitch of, soccer in the nation. So hopefully USL clubs are able to kind of capitalize on it.
Yeah, I mean, the smart clubs are going to do that, right? Like, there's days where USL clubs are playing on the same day as World Cup games, right? And they're going to hopefully not be playing at the same time. We haven't seen those announcements. But smart clubs are going to have things like come to the stadium. We're going to put the World Cup game up on the Jumbotron, and then stick around for the actual game, right? Or vice versa, depending on what the schedule looks like. We're going to do both of these things. The doubleheader, come watch, the big boys play, so to speak. No, no shade on USL Championship, and then watch your club play, right? Or whatever the case may be. Or we'll see other kinds of marketing around that. I don't think every club is going to pull that off successfully. That's just the nature of this league. I would be not surprised to see some clubs totally kind of punt on that and not take advantage. But the well-organized clubs, the disciplined clubs, the clubs that have strong marketing departments, strong ticketing departments, are absolutely going to find ways to put those pieces together and try and put as many paying customers in the seats as possible, in coordination with the World Cup.
Yeah, Oliver, you kind of hit on something that I was kind of already thinking with the Hearts of Pine, and something that just in my own thought process can totally see those guys pulling off is exactly what you just talked about, where you watch a Hearts of Pine game and then everyone stays and food trucks are all there and beer's all there and everything's ready to go. And we have had a TV in Fitzpatrick Stadium right towards the end of last year when we were getting ready to watch another game, depending on the result of the game that's happening there today. So I wouldn't be surprised if they have a match time wise that matches up, and that is something that the Hearts of Pine possibly pull off. And well, we already saw that they, with their lighthouse kit that they put out, they're already tying into the World Cup this year. And the kind of crossover with the lighthouse, up there in Washington County, and still tying that to Maine and still tying that to the World Cup. They've already got the thought process headed down that road, and yeah, you're kind of reading my mind, Oliver. I don't believe it's too far fetched to see the Hearts of Pine pull off something.
Now, of course, the thing with Hearts of Pine is they can't sell any more tickets than they already do, which is a bit of a problem for Vermont Green as well. You've literally.
These are good products. I would love if Hartford had that problem.
Right? I mean, is this an opportunity for Hartford Athletic if they can have another successful season like they had last year? They get this 2-month period of time to really try and pull some fans. I think I mentioned this before. My wife and I go on a road trip vacation every year for like 7, 9, 10 days, whatever it is, and we always try and incorporate at least one MLS game on that trip. Well, when we go on our trip this year, there won't be any MLS. So I really do feel like there is this opportunity in May and June in particular. I mean that is some of the best time to go and see soccer, right? The weather is fantastic. So I do think it really is a big opportunity. But is it more of an opportunity for Hartford, who doesn't sell out every single game? Or RAFC also, they don't sell out every single game. Or Mike, maybe some of the other teams that Vermont Green goes and plays that, well, I mean, some of them don't even sell tickets. They just hang out on the deck of some guy's bar. But like, is this an opportunity for those teams? Yeah. Those guys. Yeah, out in the beautiful town of Epping. That is best well known for its drag strip. So is this an opportunity for those types of clubs that haven't quite captured their community like Portland and Vermont?
Yeah, I mean, I think that when we talk about it, I've heard people talk about how it's like super risky. About how they may have overplayed their hand, but I think it's kind of just like quietly brilliant. I mean, depending on how you think about like the future of this league, and to tack on to what we were talking about before, with possible work stoppages and stuff, or possible exposure to a wider audience too. I think that I think this is a quietly brilliant strategy. Like, I think that they have thought about this deeply, and to echo kind of what Oliver and Sean also said too, is like, I think in Vermont Green also plays during that time, and I think the Vermont Clover are going to play at that time, the UPSL team in Vermont. So I mean, they're kind of filling that void that the MLS is leaving, and they're really positioning themselves as like the live domestic soccer option. And to Oliver's point, like, they can put that stuff, the championship teams especially can put that stuff up on their boards, on their video boards. UVM's not going to have a video board till I think 2027 season, but still, like, there are going to be plenty of watch options in and around the stadiums. Uh, and I also want to mention, while I'm going on my little rant here, that I just saw Sean drinking out of a jar, mason jar, and there's nothing more New England than that. So you're getting your New England Roundtable. But this does feel like a preview of like some future summers that are coming up, whether it's like, the expanded World Cups, the Copa, the Gold Cup, like those type of things. Like, as those cups become more frequent, the obviously calendar congestion isn't going to go away, but like, if this becomes an opportunity for a league like the USL to take advantage of any time the MLS says, "Hey, we're going to stop working," during this time period. If the USL takes this calculated risk and it pays off, I think the future is bright, and for them playing through these typical work stoppages, or I mean,
Yeah,
play
and Sam, I
stoppages,
mean,
I should
isn't
say.
this the perfect
Yeah, and
opportunity to pitch themselves as soccer you can actually afford to go to for a reasonable amount of money? Because I mean, MLS is affordable, sure, but they are going to take a break every summer now. So, like Mike said, if you want to go and see live soccer, you're going to be looking at overpriced World Cup tickets if they decide to have the Copa America in the U.S. again. Like, these are your options. Very, very expensive. I mean, we got our hey, buy tickets to the France, Brazil, totally meaningless friendly before the World Cup. Cheapest tickets starting at $115, sitting on the roof, 3 miles from the field. $115 to watch a game of no consequence. Right. So, like, I feel like this is the perfect opportunity for them to say, oh, you don't want to take out a second mortgage to watch a soccer game? Great. You can go to $3 Dewey's and watch the World Cup game for free. And then you can come on over and watch our game. You can get in the door for, $50.
And get
yeah,
wings and drinks, for probably discounted prices.
yeah, and I think it's even more crucial when you're looking at some FIFA Fan Fest actually charging money to
That's
enter them.
that's it's too
That's
much.
particularly been something. Oh, of course it's too much. I mean, to go to a fan fest and have to pay money is absolutely insane. I mean, if you're, getting food inside and you're buying from like concession stand or whatever, sure, whatever. But to pay just to be able to get in and to watch soccer in a public space, um, makes zero sense. So no news on if Boston's going to be doing that, but I think it's a big opportunity for, if you have clubs who are playing on the same day to have those games. And if you're looking at the value that you're getting, if you get to watch a soccer game in person while also getting to see a World Cup game and kind of a unique experience, unique environment, that sounds a lot more appetizing than just being, with a bunch of people at, Boston Common or what have you. So I think that's a big opportunity. I think there's a big opportunity, even if you don't have game days, to partner with, local bars, local restaurants, have them show the game, be able to kind of, market to new fans by just, having club representatives there. So I think there's this massive opportunity when you're having FIFA charge for a fan fest, when you have these insane ticket prices for World Cup tickets. I think there's a real opportunity for people who really care about the games, who kind of further promote, their club or what have you. So it's going to be really interesting to see, what clubs kind of decide to do. But I think there's definitely a massive opportunity, not just from a growing the game standpoint. I mean, these clubs want to make money. I think, when you look at it from that standpoint too, a massive opportunity to potentially create lifelong fans just by engaging people and providing a space for them to watch a game or to
Yeah, and
make a
look,
connection.
the other thing here is there are, we just got Portland Hearts of Pine. They just got going last year. Obviously, RAFC is going into their third season, but the growth of teams in New England is going to continue into 2026, right? So we have just a couple that we know of. Mike's mentioned Vermont Clover, a new UPSL team up in Burlington. There's Connecticut United, which is going to be an independent MLS Next Pro team down in Connecticut. And then there's also York County AFC, which is going to be up in the great county of York, up in Maine. Fantastic place to go in the summer. Well, any time of the year, but mostly the summer. So this, and they're going to be playing in the leagues for clubs, which gets right to the point as to what it is that they do. Is there more room for these types of teams? And what do they have to do to break through? Like what is Vermont Clover going to have to do to get a foothold in the beautiful city of Burlington? What is Connecticut United going to, aside from finding somewhere to play, what is Connecticut United going to have to do down in Connecticut now that Hartford seems to be resurgent? And then Sean, how much more runway is there up in Portland for more teams to come into the fold? Anyone?
Yeah, so this new club down here in York County, and I think they're very much in the same boat as the Connecticut team. Is they got to find a place to play, right? But if they can find a place to play, they can go ahead and break the inertia and get that first game going and get started. There's people on the wait list to go to a Hearts of Pine game that they just cannot get tickets to. So there's a pool of people out there that are looking to go watch some soccer somewhere. So this Leagues of Clubs team here in York County, Maine, could be hitting at just the right time if they can get up and running and get going and get the advertisement out there. They could pull in some people. If they could put a pretty decent product out there on the pitch and keep people in the stands, yeah, they could be onto something. But they gotta go ahead and do the hardest thing and get things started. But yeah, there is certainly appetite for more soccer up here in Maine.
Yeah, as far as Connecticut United goes, I'm pretty skeptical of this whole project. I, there's not a lot of appetite for us to build a stadium, right? They don't seem to have the money at the moment, and there's certainly no appetite to spend any kind of money, municipal or state money on that, at least right now. Maybe the World Cup changes that. Maybe the World Cup brings such energy to soccer that the state of Connecticut is suddenly willing to put, $500 million into a stadium, and we have an MLS team in Bridgeport in 2027 or something like that. I don't believe that's the case, but it could happen. But what I will say is the approach they're taking is they're going to kind of barnstorm the state, right? They're going to play around the state of Connecticut this season. They haven't announced any venues yet, but that, on some level, well executed, that could actually be a really interesting approach in this very specific year. If it was 2025 or 2027, I would be more skeptical of it. But if you're going to take an approach in a World Cup year, we're going to play exactly one game in your town. We're going to play, we have 16 home games or 17 home games. We're going to pick 17 venues in Connecticut. We're going to come to your town and we're going to play in your town. And that's going to be your opportunity to see live soccer. There's like a marketing campaign that you could build around that. There's a way you could approach that would be really exciting, that would get a lot of eyes on your product. You put the tickets at $8 or $10 or something pretty cheap. You bring in food trucks to the venue. You do everything in kind of a very low stakes way, but a way that generates enthusiasm and focuses on the local, builds the idea of a CT United brand. We're playing everywhere. Hey, Hartford Athletic, they just play in Hartford City. Who's ever heard of them? We play everywhere. We play in Brantford. We play in, wherever. There's an opportunity. It doesn't feel like this team is really well equipped to take advantage of that opportunity. They don't seem to have the marketing heft. They don't seem to have the communications heft to do that. But I can certainly envision how in this very specific year, this could actually end up being exactly the right approach to build enthusiasm around a new soccer project in this state. But I don't know if it'll happen.
Yeah.
I feel the same way about the new team in Vermont. And they, to my knowledge, they don't have a place to play yet. There are a lot of, so the main problem with finding a place to play is not the fact that there are a lot of high schools around that have turf fields. There are a lot of high schools around that can house 500 to 1,000 fans if you need. It's just that those fields are being used by the youth clubs. There's 5-6 youth clubs here in Vermont, up in Burlington. And so I think that's like the main hurdle. I mean, we're going to talk, on United and Green, we're going to talk to Chris George the owner of the team, in a couple of weeks. But to my knowledge, right now they don't have a place to play. And maybe Chris will be dropping some stuff for us on that podcast that we don't know yet. But I think that like the way it can work out for a team like that is that the UPSL plays a different schedule, than the USL2 does. So you're gonna get fans that want to go see games when Vermont Green aren't playing. You're gonna get fans that get shut out of Vermont Green games because you just can't get tickets. It's much like Portland, on a smaller scale, but you're just going to have fans that just can't get tickets that are going to say, okay, then I'm going to go over to this other team. So I think that Chris and his ownership group are going to have an opportunity to take advantage of some stuff that that is just kind of sitting out there. And also, like, I think Oliver just made a pitch to be the marketing advisor for Connecticut United. So I think that maybe are you looking for a job, Oliver? I don't know.
I'm not looking for a job, but if they want to give me a call, just we're not on Substack anymore. I don't know how to DM someone on Ghost, but send me a message on Ghost.
Hey, I mean, Oliver, if we could go 2 for 2 on getting writers into club jobs, that would be amazing. But as Mike was talking about, I actually dropped an article with Chris George of Vermont Clover, and like Mike mentioned, they don't really seem to have a place to play yet. They're looking for somewhere, like Mike mentioned, 500 to 1,000 people. And like the big thing that I got from that conversation is being able to have these clubs, even in these lower leagues, just provides opportunity. When you look at a Vermont Green, for example, that's the top 1% of collegiate players. But if you're looking to kind of provide opportunities for players who don't fall in that 1%, that's when you look at the UPSLs and kind of, other clubs. So I think it's great for kind of a soccer landscape, a soccer climate for these clubs to exist for, the top players. If you're looking for University of Maine, again, maybe some UVM players who aren't on, Vermont Green for some reason, to provide them those opportunities. I think it's going to be interesting. I think, particularly for me, I don't pay attention to a lot of UPSL, quite frankly. When I heard the 500 to 1,000, I'm like, oh, that's a decent amount of people. It's going to be interesting to see what they're able to pull. They do seem committed on providing that atmosphere. But I think really it's just about providing that infrastructure. And I mean, talk about Connecticut United. I've talked with Oliver about this. They're going about it the right way when it comes to their roster.
Yeah.
Some of the players they've been able to get are amazing. Anthony Ramos, the goalkeeper they got, was down in Liga MX. He's someone I actually knew of, which compared to MLS Next Pro players is a pretty high bar to reach. They got some players, from the MLS Next Pro Eastern Conference Finals, New York Red Bulls. So overall, I'm impressed with what they've been able to do on the field. Again, it seems like from everyone I talk to and kind of, spaces I'm in, the question is, are they actually going to play, and like, where are they going to play? Like you said, Oliver, I think for this year, maybe only kind of going around the state could be good, but they need to find a certain home. But I think just the creation of all these clubs really just shows how the game has grown in the region. And I think, being able to provide opportunities for players to continue to grow is really important. So hopefully, these clubs are able to sustain themselves, and it's not, oh, we have this great kind of launch and then kind of dissipate. Hopefully it's something that lasts, and maybe we could see even more clubs
the
pop
issue
up.
is that there was, again, with MLS taking this break. There's a UPSL team in Worcester. I think it's called U Nations or something like that. They've been around for a while. But I would look at their schedule, and it's Saturday night 7:30, Saturday night 7:30, Saturday night 7:30, Saturday night. It's like, oh, okay, well, I'm probably not going to go because every other week the Revs are at home, so we go to the Revs game when they're away. We like to, for God knows why, we like to watch the away games. The last couple seasons. All of a sudden now, though, you've got this 2-month break where if you're a Rev season ticket holder, then if you really, to me personally, almost any level of soccer, level of soccer live, actually watching it in person is better than watching it on TV. Whether it, even the Premier League, given the option of watching a Premier League game or actually going out and physically attending a game, I would almost always choose to go out and physically attend a game and watch it in person. It's just a different experience. So I think it does kind of open up those.
Well, it's also because you're a Tottenham fan, so I mean,
that's waning, to be honest. I can't take it anymore. I don't know why I care. I'm at the point now where I legitimately, I don't understand why I care about a team from London, right? Like it was.
We need Tom on Wicked Spursy, Mike.
No,
That's what I'm telling you. We'll get him back in.
Yeah, we do. It would have been a great conversation last night.
I can barely bring myself to care anymore, to be honest. At this point, I'm happy that I stuck with the team until they won a trophy. And now if I walk away, I won't feel bad. I'm pretty much done.
You got to retire on top. You got to go
just like the coach.
Like
guy wins a trophy and he gets fired.
Like
so,
Ange
you know what? Fuck him. But anyway, all right. Look, we should not going to be able to give this too much time, but I do just want to touch on, in addition to all these new men's teams that are continuing to come into New England, we are seeing. I honestly think this is now the third attempt of women's soccer taking some sort of foothold in New England. So Boston Legacy is going to be is starting to play this season. Incidentally, it sounds like a Boston Legacy is sending off all the time down Providence, which is interesting. But apparently this is what they have to do. We also have, and it seems like anyway, W League is going to have a presence in New England. The last real significant presence for amateur college level women's soccer was several years ago, when it was basically it was like 3 Boston Breakers reserve teams and a bunch of other random teams. So how do we feel about, how much attention do you all pay to women's soccer? Obviously, it's not really super ideal that there's 5 middle-aged men on this show this week, but how much
Sam just caught some strays there.
How much?
Come on.
How much? What needs to happen for this to go well? And just among the 4 of you here, how much more capacity do you have to take in even more soccer than you do already with women's soccer? Again, really trying to make maybe its third attempt at getting a foothold in New England.
Well, I'll just say I have a lot of capacity for soccer, right? And if it's, I've joked before about how much I watch on TV, but as many of those games as I can transfer into watching something in person is great. It's just not super convenient for me to go to Rhode Island or me to go up to, to Foxborough on a regular basis for games. So Hartford Athletic is going to have, a women's amateur league, W League team. That's, I think, 6 more home games, something like that. I think they play a 12-game schedule, home and away. That's 6 more live soccer games in my life, from my perspective, and that's going to be great. They're offering it to season ticket holders. I think you pay $50 season ticket holders, and they get all the home games for the W League team that they can go into, which is honestly a great deal if you're already a season ticket holder. And I think honestly, I won't speak to Boston Legacy, but for Hartford Athletic, it's amateur. Like it's equivalent of USL2 in a lot of really good ways, right? Like the way you make this successful is you have fans who care about it, which is, I don't want to say it's easy to do, but there's a built-in audience, and you put a product on the field that they want to cheer for. And Hartford is leaning into signing as many USL2 teams do, and as a lot of W League 2 teams or W League teams are doing, a lot of college players who are local, building on what academy infrastructure they had. Like that's a recipe for success, right? You've got women who are playing or have played their college soccer locally. You've got women who have come up through the Hartford Athletic Academy or maybe another regional club team, local club team. Those are recipes for success. They have friends, they have family, they have loved ones who are going to come out and support them. They have a built-in support from Hartford Athletic. Connecticut is, in some ways, probably one of the best places to put a women's sports team. It lives and dies by UConn Huskies women's basketball, has lived and died by the WNBA team, which is going to get ripped out as well, the Connecticut Sun. Like, Hartford, specifically in Connecticut, generally is a great place for women's sports. And I think the way you make this successful is you just put an attractive product on the field, and I mean sporting attractive, right? Product on the field. Thanks, Sam. You put a good product on the field, and people are happy. And it's 12 games. Like this isn't high stakes, right? This isn't you're not putting a $2 million roster together. You're not spending a ton of money. You've got the stadium. You've got everything in place. So I have really high hopes for W League and Hartford. Boston Legacy, I don't know. Jackie Contreras is who covers that for the site, and it'd be great to get her perspective. But Sam, I don't know, or Mike or Sean, if you have more thoughts on that one.
I mean, I'll just be quick, but I'll say that Boston Legacy is really doing a lot of the right things in terms of talent's been able to bring, whether it's kind of across the world or in NWSL. Really impressed with the roster, really impressed with the coaching staff, really impressed with the front office. Obviously, playing in Providence is a massive hit, in my opinion. They're called Boston Legacy. They're not called New England Legacy. So I think that's really going to hurt them and kind of impact the fan base they're able to grow. For me, my capacity, I will gladly admit that it isn't exactly, you know, uh, gleaming with opportunities, but I am excited about Boston Legacy. For me, going to Gillette is something I'm just kind of used to when trudging down there for the Rebs. So I know their home opener and the Rebs home opener. It'll be 2 days, so I'm hoping to head down to both of those games. So really excited, and I think if they can get past these off the field hurdles and they can play well, that will kind of be a distant memory. So really excited to see what they're able to do.
Yeah, and to speak for the Green and the women's side, like I not just the Green. In fact, I think that first off, the entire New England region should be like a stronghold for the women's game. We have historic college programs. I mean, the women's game was stronger in New England long before the men's game was. We have youth participation in different leagues, different clubs. That's been pretty elite for decades. NESC's been elite. Seaboats has been competitive on a lot of different fronts. So and we have a fan base here that kind of already understands the sport, right? Especially with the success of Portland and Rhode Island, and even this year with Hartford, and some success with the Revs in the past. But with the women's game, it's not just about filling like a calendar gap. It's about like Sam had said about legitimacy, um, performance on the field, and permanence. I think if the sport is going to grow in the U.S., it can really only succeed in a handful of markets, and New England is probably the best place to kind of grow that. But for Vermont itself, I'm very excited about the women's team and about the opportunity to play the pro clubs that Hartford brings, and hopefully the Hearts will bring when they get their women's team off the ground, and I know they're probably in the works right now with that. So I'm going to kind of kick it over to Sean.
Yeah, is that in the cards, Sean?
I maybe ask the question.
Yeah, it very much is in the cards for the Portland Hearts of Pine, and getting a USLW team is probably what you're going to see for Portland. And more than likely, that's probably going to be 2027 is probably the year that is kind of penciled in right now. We've as a supporters group, the Derigo Union. I've already had some podcasts with a few women's team out west and stuff like that, and understood the structure from a supporters side of the house, and the load that takes on a supporters group, and how they chose to structure themselves to support both a women's team and a men's team, and lessons learned and all that sort of stuff. So the Derigo Union is already doing its homework to support this women's team that's going to be coming here to Portland here in the next couple of years. At least that's what we're planning for. So in terms of supporting a women's team, and and seeing the same type of efforts that you see on Hearts game days, and doing that for the women's teams, is very much in the plans for the Derigo Union, and welcoming them to
Yeah,
Fitzpatrick.
I am really, really hopeful that it'll go well. Because like I said, the way it was before, the Breakers really just couldn't seem to get their act together in two iterations. The WPSL when it was here, the last year it was it was 8 teams in the league. 3 of them were Boston Breakers reserve teams. The NEFC team, like they just played at NEFC Park and there's no spectators. It was just like again, I was just kind of like, yeah, okay, like we'll do it. So hopefully this time around it's able to go well and it's sustainable. I think what we had heard in recent years was kind of this. Well, we'd love to do it, but we need more teams to do it. And it seemed like there was like 3 or 4 different organizations all saying, well, if there was a league for us to play in, we would do it. It's like, okay. So I think maybe they kind of all started to figure, well, if we all just make this commitment, if Hartford makes the commitment, Vermont makes the commitment, I think AC Connecticut was already.
AC Connecticut
Yeah,
moving
right.
over
Like they
from
were
the
kind of the only
Metropolitan
ones. I'm
Division,
sure for
right?
them,
So
they would love to move over as well. I mean, the thing is, Mike, in Burlington, I mean, they know this is going to work out because they've been doing friendlies with the women's team for a couple of years and they've sold the place out. I mean, it literally doesn't even matter. Men's team, women's team, doesn't matter. We sell the place out, which I understand. Look, I would go up to Burlington and watch Far Post under 16s play in the beautiful city of Burlington. But what what is going to make this work elsewhere? What is going to make this work outside of, outside of Burlington or Portland? I would imagine Portland would be able to pretty comfortably sell, 1,500 to 2,000 tickets. So, but if we want this to stay this time,
I think
what has to happen for it to stick around?
you can't have pop-up teams, right? I mean, you can't just have these Johnny come lately pop-up teams where, and I guess for lack of better way of putting it, you can't just have an inexpensive option to buy in, right? You have to have ownership groups that are going to want to come in and grow the sport and grow the women's game. So I think that's why established teams like or in clubs like Hartford Athletic, AC Connecticut, Vermont Green, to an extent, we haven't obviously played a full season, but we have had 3 friendly games in the past 2 years, and I think that it's a way to it's kind of a litmus test, right? So it's a way to kind of see how this is going to grow, and it could grow into a situation where you have Portland, where you have Hartford Athletic going, okay, we have succeeded in this USLW league. We might actually be a viable option to go into the Super League, right? And grow it that way. I mean, obviously that's years away, and Vermont, you may see a women's professional team before you see a men's professional team. You never know how that's going to go. I mean, it's an amazing time that we're in right now with this sport, and I think that we have the amazing opportunity to grow the women's game and give it the due it deserves, because long before the men's game really caught on, the US women's national team was soccer in America. Um, Especially after some of the failings of the men's national team. So I think that the women's game is big here, and I don't profess to watch the professional women's game in the United States. I do watch Spurs women, and get to see that through my One Hotspur membership, and it uh I think that the women's game is as entertaining, if not sometimes more entertaining than the men's game, and I think people just have to open their hearts to it and see what can happen, because it's gonna be I think it's gonna be a good thing for New England and for the sport in general.
Yeah, and I'll just add, I learned that evidently USL Championship clubs have rights to Super League teams. That's kind of part of the package, and I don't know there's a buy-in or whatever, but they have the right to do that. And I know that Hartford Athletic in particular is approaching this very much, to your point, Mike, with the attitude of that's where we want to go. If we can feel successful in this, we absolutely want to exercise that option and pursue a Super League team. Now, what the timeline for that is, I don't know. It could be 3 years, it could be 5 years. There's a lot of moving pieces there. But I do know that that is kind of in people's minds, particularly for the championship clubs that are entering into the W League, because that option is there on the table for them. And yeah, I absolutely agree. Women's soccer is great to watch, particularly when you're watching. It's like watching any high level athletic event. If you're watching top women's college soccer players play, they are playing at a very high level, and that's what USLW League is. It is the best women's college soccer players playing, much like USL2 is the best men's college soccer players in many cases playing. And so there's a real, I don't know, I think there's a lot to recommend.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Sean, I'll give you the last word here in a second. Yeah, I mean, I coached for 13 years, and it's probably 80% of the teams that I coached were were either girls or women's teams. So for a while, I watched quite a bit of of girls and women's soccer. Mostly 5 feet away from the field, but also obviously went to college games. I was fortunate enough to coach some players that went on to play in college or done really well for their high school team. And it's great. It's great to watch. It's enjoy. Like if you love soccer and you can get out live to a women's game, you're going to enjoy it just as much as the men's game. Yeah. So I just hope that it sticks this time. Like Boston Legacy is the biggest one, the only professional one that's going to be here. They seem to have put together a great roster, but for sure they've kind of got to figure out the whole where we're playing and getting people to come in and watch the game. They definitely have got to get that all figured out, because I think that does potentially allow for, if they do well, that can start to filter out to, what all these other organizations are trying to do. So hopefully it goes well. Like you guys said, I mean, live soccer to me is better than anything you can watch on TV. So the more of it we have access to, the more of it that we have access to that is actually affordable and is reasonable to get to. I just think it just benefits everybody here, and it gives more opportunities to more players to play the game at a high level.
Yeah, so just the last word on the women's team here in Portland, and just kind of wanted to point out the fact that Portland is kind of like strategically placed right in between two women's Division 1 soccer colleges, where UMaine up in Bangor and UNH down in Durham, New Hampshire, and they both I've been to 2 or 3 different soccer matches between UNH and UMaine, and I'm here to tell you they are very entertaining soccer matches when those two get together. Of course, my position here in the state, typically when they're at UNH, that's typically when I'll go over and watch them over there at UNH. But they are very, very exciting matches. You can even find them on YouTube if you're just curious and you want to just go ahead and pull it up on YouTube somewhere. Just go ahead and search, UNH Wildcats and UMaine Black Bears women's soccer match or something like that, and you can couple searches and fine tunes, you can certainly find it pretty easy. And yeah, entertaining soccer. We also have Maine Footy, which is an amateur club that already in operation here in Portland. Plenty of places to pull from, and might as well also throw in the fact that we did have Michelle Akers here for the Hearts, and she was very interested in working with the organization. And maybe they go back to Michelle and say, "Hey, we're trying to kick off this women's team in 2027. You interested?" Along with being part of the Hearts as well for the men's side. Hopefully, we get a yes, and that will help spur a Portland women's team here. Hopefully.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this is look, this is going to be a big year, and I think last week and this week's show we've certainly kind of gone over all there is that is in front of us to look forward to. And this roundtable was it was great to be a part of last year. It was hopefully you enjoyed listening to it, and you'll continue to do so into 2026. But as you can clearly tell from the last 2 weeks of episodes, there is just so much soccer in New England to come over the next 7 or 8 months. And we'll be here to continue covering it. We'll be back next week. We've got some great guests lined up. We actually have somebody coming on to talk about the USL, the labor negotiations. We have somebody from York County AFC coming on in February. as well. So we really are kind of setting the table here for everything to come, and we'll continue to dig into all of this as the year continues. So hopefully you have enjoyed our first 2 weeks back in 2026, enjoyed year 2 of the Roundtable getting started. On Oliver, Mike, Sam, who ducked out a little while ago, will be back throughout the year. So please continue to tune in. Please continue to like and subscribe and download the show wherever you get your podcasts from. And we will see you all back here next week.